Marcus Chen had always thought his biggest problem in college would be organic chemistry. That was before the Galactic Student Exchange Program landed a 7-foot crystalline being named Zefka in his cramped dorm room at Berkeley. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. Marcus was hunched over his laptop, desperately trying to understand molecular structures while surviving on his third energy drink of the day. The knock on his door came at exactly 9:47 a.m., followed by 3 official-looking humans in dark suits and a creature that looked like someone had taught a chandelier to walk. "Mr. Chen," said the lead official, a stern woman with silver hair, "congratulations. You've been selected for the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Program." Marcus stared at them through his thick-rimmed glasses, still holding a half-eaten bagel. "The what now?" "Your application was quite impressive," she continued, ignoring his confusion. "Your essay on adapting to different living situations particularly stood out." "That was for housing services," Marcus protested weakly. "I just wanted a single room." The crystalline being stepped forward, its faceted surface catching the fluorescent light and throwing rainbow patterns across the wall. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Greetings, roommate-to-be Marcus Chen. I am Zefka of the Resonance Collective. I anticipate our cohabitation will be most enlightening." That's when Marcus noticed his regular roommate Jake's bed was gone, replaced by what looked like a platform made of the same crystalline material as his new roommate. The officials handed him a thick manual titled Living with Non-Carbon-Based Entities, a Human's Guide, and left before he could form a coherent protest. Zefka stood in the center of the small room, somehow managing to make the space feel even more cramped despite being largely translucent. "Shall we begin the traditional roommate bonding ritual?" it asked. "We don't really have those," Marcus said, still clutching his bagel like a security blanket. "Fascinating. My research indicated humans engage in sharing of personal histories and establishment of behavioral boundaries." Marcus realized he was dealing with something that had actually read about human customs. "Okay, sure. I'm a biochemistry major, I like old movies, and I really need to pass organic chemistry or my parents will disown me." Zefka's crystalline form shimmered, and Marcus learned this was the equivalent of nodding. "I am studying what you call human resilience for my thesis in xenopsychology. My people are curious about your species' remarkable ability to adapt to impossible situations." "Impossible situations?" "Your planet is a death trap by galactic standards. Excessive gravity, toxic atmosphere composition for most species, dangerous radiation from your star, not to mention the local fauna that seems designed specifically to end existence. Yet humans thrive. Most fascinating." Marcus had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. "What's your planet like?" "Crystal caves beneath the surface of a gas giant. Perfect harmonic resonance, no weather, no predators, no unexpected variables. Quite peaceful, though apparently boring beyond comprehension according to other species." The first real challenge came within hours. Marcus returned from his afternoon classes to find his side of the room covered in a fine, glittering dust. Zefka was vibrating at a high frequency, and every surface near it was resonating in sympathy. "Apologies," Zefka chimed, its voice tight with embarrassment. "I was attempting to study, but your quantum mechanics textbook is causing involuntary harmonic disturbance." Marcus looked at his physics book, now covered in crystal dust. "What's wrong with it?" "The fundamental incorrectness of several theories is causing cognitive dissonance. When my people experience strong emotion, we shed resonance particles." "You're stress shedding because my textbook is wrong?" "Spectacularly wrong. Your species' understanding of quantum mechanics is approximately 47% accurate, which is somehow more disturbing than complete ignorance." Marcus spent the next hour helping Zefka clean up crystal dust while learning that human physics was considered charmingly primitive by galactic standards. It was like discovering that everything you thought you knew about riding a bicycle was wrong, but you'd somehow managed to stay upright anyway. The food situation proved equally complicated. Marcus discovered that Zefka didn't eat in any conventional sense, it absorbed ambient energy from its surroundings. Unfortunately, it had a particular fondness for the energy produced by electronic devices. "Why is my laptop dead again?" Marcus asked the next morning, staring at his completely drained battery. "Apologies. Your device produces such lovely electrical resonance while you sleep. Very soothing. Marcus held up his equally dead phone. And this? Also quite harmonious. I may have become carried away. It turned out that Zefka's idea of a midnight snack was draining every electronic device in a 20-foot radius. Marcus learned to sleep with his electronics locked in a metal box. Apparently, Faraday cages worked on crystalline energy vampires. But the real culture shock came during Marcus's study group sessions. His friends had initially been excited to meet an alien until Zefka started casually correcting their homework. Actually, Jennifer, Zefka chimed during a particularly brutal calculus session, your approach to differential equations is unnecessarily complex. In galactic standard mathematics, this problem has a three-step solution. Jennifer, who had been struggling with the problem for an hour, looked up hopefully. Really? Can you show me? What followed was a mathematical explanation so advanced that it made their calculus look like counting on fingers. Zefka had to repeatedly apologize and step back to more primitive approaches until it found something humans could actually follow. This is why my people find humans so intriguing, Zefka explained later, after Marcus's friends had left with their pride thoroughly bruised. You achieve remarkable results with inefficient methods. It's like watching someone build a starship with stone tools. Thanks, Marcus said dryly. Really feeling the love for humanity there. You misunderstand. We find it inspiring. Most species, when they encounter advanced mathematics or physics, simply adopt the superior methods. Humans stubbornly continue using their own approaches and somehow make them work. Your determination to succeed despite lacking proper tools is quite admirable. Marcus was beginning to understand that living with Zefka was like having a roommate who was simultaneously a genius and completely clueless about basic social interaction. The alien had vast knowledge about the universe but couldn't understand why humans needed to sleep 8 hours a day or why Marcus got upset when his electronics were drained. The breakthrough in their relationship came during Marcus's organic chemistry midterm crisis. He'd been studying for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination, when he finally broke down. I can't do this, he said, staring at molecular diagrams that seemed to swim before his exhausted eyes. I'm going to fail, and my parents are going to kill me, and I'll have to drop out and work at my uncle's restaurant forever. Zefka, who had been quietly researching in the corner, suddenly went very still. You are experiencing distress. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Your biosigns indicate extreme stress levels. This is harmful to human physiology. Tell me something I don't know. I could help you study. Marcus laughed bitterly. Right, like when you helped my study group? I can't learn galactic superchemistry. My human brain doesn't work that way. No, but I could learn human chemistry and help you understand it better. It was such a simple offer, but it hit Marcus like a revelation. Zefka wasn't trying to show off or prove superiority, it was offering to step down to his level to help him succeed. For the next 6 hours, Marcus watched in amazement as one of the most advanced beings he'd ever met struggled to understand human-level organic chemistry. Zefka had to actively suppress its vast knowledge and think in human terms. It was like watching a master chef learn to make sandwiches. This is actually quite challenging, Zefka admitted, its crystalline form dim with concentration. Your chemical notation system is so primitive that I must constantly translate from concepts I understand to ones you can process. Welcome to my world, Marcus said, but he was smiling now. By dawn, Marcus not only understood the material but had gained something far more valuable, respect for his alien roommate's willingness to meet him where he was. And Zefka had learned something too, that sometimes the most advanced approach wasn't always the most helpful one. Marcus passed his midterm with a B+, his best grade in organic chemistry yet. When he came back to the room that afternoon, he found Zefka and what he'd learned was a meditative pose, its crystalline form barely visible. Good news, Marcus announced. I didn't completely humiliate myself. Zefka's form brightened. Excellent. Your success brings me satisfaction. Why? I mean, you could probably teach the class better than our professor. Teaching advanced concepts to advanced minds requires little skill. Helping someone achieve success within their limitations that requires wisdom. Today, I learned wisdom from watching you persist despite obstacles. Marcus flopped onto his bed, finally, allowing himself to feel proud. You know what? Maybe this roommate thing won't be so bad after all. I concur. Though I still do not understand your species' obsession with carbonated beverages. Marcus grinned. Give it time. We'll work on it. As the weeks progressed, their living situation evolved into something neither had expected. Marcus learned to appreciate having a roommate who could explain why certain scientific theories worked the way they did, while Zefka discovered the peculiar human talent for finding unconventional solutions to complex problems. The real test came when Marcus decided to cook dinner for both of them, a gesture that required significant research into what constituted energy-rich foods for a crystalline being. It turned out that Zefka could absorb energy from spicy foods, particularly anything with capsaicin. This is fascinating, Zefka chimed, somehow managing to eat a jalapeno pepper by holding it in its crystalline matrix. The energy release from this chemical reaction is quite invigorating. Marcus watched his alien roommate essentially photosynthesize Mexican food and realized his life had become wonderfully, impossibly strange. I'm glad you like it. Though I should probably warn you, human food gets a lot weirder than this. I look forward to experiencing weirder, Zefka replied, its form practically glowing with contentment. That night, as Marcus lay in bed listening to the gentle harmonic resonance that served as Zefka's version of sleep breathing, he reflected on how completely his life had changed. 6 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been passing organic chemistry. Now he was learning about galactic civilizations, teaching an alien about human culture, and somehow managing to maintain his grades despite living with someone who occasionally shed glitter when excited. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Zefka had mentioned wanting to experience human recreational activities, which could mean anything from watching Netflix to attempting rock climbing. Given his roommate's talent for turning simple situations into complex cultural exchanges, Marcus suspected it would be an adventure either way. But, for the first time since the mysterious officials had appeared at his door, Marcus found himself looking forward to finding out what those challenges would be. Living with an alien roommate was definitely difficult, but it was also teaching him things about himself and his species that he never would have discovered otherwise. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus made a mental note to buy more of those metal storage boxes. He had a feeling he was going to need them. 3 months into the most bizarre living arrangement of his life, Marcus Chen thought he had figured out the rhythm of cohabiting with a crystalline alien. He was wrong. The morning that changed everything started when Marcus woke up to find his alarm clock displaying symbols that definitely weren't numbers. He blinked hard, rubbing his eyes, but the strange geometric patterns remained glowing softly on the digital display. Zefka, he called out groggily. Did you do something to my clock? His roommate's crystalline form was already upright in its meditation posture, which usually meant it had been awake for hours. I may have inadvertently interfaced with your temporal measurement device during my dream cycle. You're what now? I was processing the day's experiences while in rest mode. Sometimes my subconscious mind reaches out to nearby technology. I apologize, I will attempt to reverse the linguistic conversion. Marcus watched in fascination as Zefka extended a tendril of crystalline energy toward his alarm clock. The alien symbols flickered and gradually resolved back into familiar numbers, 7:23 a.m. How did you even know our symbols? Marcus asked, pulling on his jeans. I have been studying human written language systems. Your species has developed over 6,000 distinct scripts throughout history. Quite remarkable for a planet that only recently achieved global communication. This was typical Zefka, casually mentioning that it had apparently memorized every human writing system while Marcus struggled to remember Spanish verb conjugations. But, lately, these casual displays of vast knowledge had been happening more frequently, and Marcus was starting to notice a pattern. The first real sign of trouble came during breakfast. Marcus was attempting to eat cereal while reviewing notes for his biochemistry exam when Zefka suddenly went completely still. Everything okay? Marcus asked around a mouthful of cornflakes. I am receiving a priority transmission from the Resonance Collective, Zefka replied, its voice carrying an odd harmonic undertone Marcus had never heard before. My academic supervisors wish to review my progress. That sounds normal. Don't professors check in on exchange students? Not exactly. Zefka's form flickered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as uncertainty. The collective is concerned about my research methodology. Marcus set down his spoon. What kind of concerned? They believe I have become too immersed in human culture to maintain scientific objectivity. They are requesting that I submit my preliminary findings for peer review. And that's bad because... Zefka was quiet for a long moment, its crystalline structure dim with thought. Because my findings contradict 70 years of established galactic research about human psychological limitations. The weight of that statement settled over Marcus like a cold blanket. What exactly have you been telling them about us? The truth. That humans consistently exceed predicted performance parameters under stress conditions. That your species demonstrates adaptive intelligence that surpasses most galactic standard measurements. That you solve complex problems through intuition and creativity rather than pure computational analysis. Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. And they don't believe you? They believe I have developed emotional attachment to my research subjects, which has compromised my academic integrity. Research subjects? The words hit Marcus like a slap. Is that what I am to you? Zefka's form blazed suddenly, bright, startling Marcus. No. That is precisely the problem. According to collective standards, you should have remained a research subject. Instead, you have become... What? A friend. And friends are not supposed to exist between species separated by this much evolutionary distance. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing with a text from his study group. But, when he looked at the screen, the message was partially displayed in the same alien symbols that had appeared on his clock. Zefka, my phone is doing the thing again. His roommate looked at the device and went very still. That should not be happening unless... Unless what? Unless our neural resonance patterns have begun to synchronize. Marcus stared at him. Our what have begun to what? In simple terms, we have been living in close proximity for so long that our brain patterns are starting to harmonize. It is theoretically impossible between carbon and crystalline-based life forms. But it's happening anyway. It is happening anyway, Zefka confirmed, its voice carrying a note of wonder. Your species continues to achieve the impossible. Over the next few days, the synchronization effects became more pronounced. Marcus found himself understanding concepts in his advanced physics class that should have been completely beyond his comprehension. Meanwhile, Zefka began experiencing what it described as emotional resonance fluctuations, essentially, alien mood swings triggered by Marcus's stress levels. The crisis came to a head when 3 collective representatives arrived at their dorm room unannounced. Unlike the human officials who had first introduced Zefka, these beings were clearly not trying to blend in with human society. They looked like larger, more angular versions of Zefka, their crystalline forms sharp and intimidating rather than graceful. When they spoke, their voices created harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. Research Unit Zefka, the lead representative intoned, you are summoned for immediate evaluation and possible extraction from this assignment. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Extraction? The human will not be harmed, the representative said, as if Marcus wasn't standing right there. However, Research Unit Zefka has clearly become contaminated by prolonged exposure to primitive neural patterns. Hey! Marcus protested. There's nothing primitive about, you will not speak unless addressed directly, the representative cut him off with a harmonic tone that felt like fingernails on a chalkboard. Your species lacks the cognitive capacity to understand these matters. Marcus felt anger surge through him and was startled to see Zefka's form suddenly blaze brighter in response. The neural synchronization was working both ways. That is incorrect, Zefka said firmly. Marcus Chen demonstrates cognitive abilities that exceed standard galactic measures in multiple categories. Impossible. No carbon-based life form from a Class M death world could achieve cognitive parity with collective standards. Observe. Zefka gestured to Marcus's desk, which was covered with homework from multiple advanced courses. Marcus is simultaneously studying biochemistry, quantum physics, organic chemistry, and advanced mathematics. He maintains passing grades in all subjects while adapting to living with a completely alien life form. The lead representative's form flickered with what Marcus was learning to recognize as disdain. Crude memorization of elementary concepts hardly constitutes intelligence. Then, perhaps you would like to test that hypothesis, Marcus said, his anger overriding his intimidation. Give me a problem. Any problem. The representatives exchanged harmonic communications that sounded like crystalline wind chimes having an argument. Finally, the leader projected a complex mathematical equation into the air using some kind of holographic technology. Marcus stared at the equation. It was unlike anything he'd seen before, part mathematics, part physics, and part something that looked like music notation. By all rights, he should have been completely lost. But, somehow, thanks to months of living with Zefka and absorbing fragments of galactic knowledge through their neural synchronization, Marcus could sense the underlying pattern. He couldn't solve it using human mathematics, but he could feel the shape of the solution. This is a harmony equation, he said slowly. You're trying to calculate the resonance frequency needed to stabilize a crystalline matrix under gravitational stress. The representatives went completely silent. The answer isn't purely mathematical, Marcus continued, following his intuition. You need to account for the emotional resonance of the beings creating the matrix. Fear destabilizes the frequency, but confidence and trust amplify it exponentially. Marcus grabbed a marker and started scribbling on his whiteboard, translating his gut understanding into mathematical symbols. It wasn't perfect, his human notation was clumsy compared to galactic standards, but the core insight was sound. When he finished, the room was dead quiet. This solution incorporates psychological variables not present in the original equation, the lead representative said finally. How did you extrapolate these factors? Because that's what humans do, Marcus said, surprised by his own confidence. We don't just solve the problem in front of us. We solve the problem behind the problem. Zefka's form was practically glowing with pride. This is what I have been trying to communicate to the collective. Humans approach complex problems by considering factors that pure logic overlooks. Their apparent inefficiency is actually a more sophisticated form of analysis. The representatives conferred again in their harmonic language. Marcus caught fragments of meaning, something about unprecedented adaptive intelligence and paradigm restructuring required. Finally, the leader spoke. These findings require extensive review by the Collective Council. Research Unit Zefka will continue the assignment, but under enhanced observation protocols. What does that mean? Marcus asked. It means, Zefka said after the representatives had left, that instead of studying human resilience as an isolated phenomenon, the collective now wants to understand how humans consistently exceed the predicted limitations of their biological design. Marcus slumped into his desk chair, feeling emotionally drained. So I'm still a research subject. No, Zefka said firmly. You are the first human to successfully communicate directly with a collective evaluation team. You are the first carbon-based life form to solve a harmony equation using intuitive analysis. You are proof that human intelligence operates on principles the galactic community does not yet understand. Great, Marcus said weakly. No pressure. But, as the implications sank in, Marcus realized something remarkable had happened. He hadn't just survived an encounter with advanced alien beings, he'd held his own intellectually. The neural synchronization with Zefka hadn't made him smarter, it had helped him access intelligence he already possessed. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said, looking at the equation he'd solved. A month ago, I was worried about passing organic chemistry. Now I'm apparently rewriting galactic assumptions about human cognitive abilities. And, tomorrow you will face new challenges that will require you to exceed today's achievements, Zefka replied. This is the human pattern. Consistent growth under impossible circumstances. Marcus managed to laugh. When you put it that way, it almost sounds heroic. From my perspective, it is heroic. Every day, your entire species performs small miracles of adaptation and problem-solving. You simply consider it normal because it is all you have ever known. That evening, Marcus sat at his desk working on actual homework, the mundane kind that didn't involve rewriting galactic science. Zefka was in its usual meditative pose, but Marcus could feel a subtle sense of contentment emanating from his roommate's crystalline form. "Hey Zefka," Marcus said without looking up from his textbook. "What happens if the collective decides that humans are more advanced than they initially thought?" "Then, everything changes. First contact protocols would need to be revised. Trade agreements would need renegotiation. The entire galactic community would need to reassess their relationship with your species." Marcus paused in his reading. "And what happens to us? To this?" He gestured around their small dorm room. "I do not know," Zefka admitted. "The collective has never encountered a situation where an exchange student's research subjects became collaborative partners. We are in uncharted territory." "Good," Marcus said firmly. "Humans are great at uncharted territory. It's kind of our thing." As he returned to his studying, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his perspective had shifted. 3 months ago, he'd been a stressed college student worried about grades and career prospects. Now he was part of a cross-species partnership that might reshape galactic understanding of human capabilities. The responsibility was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. But then, again, Marcus was beginning to understand that terrifying and exhilarating was just another way of describing normal human existence. His phone buzzed with a text from his study group, asking if he could help them with tomorrow's physics assignment. The message displayed perfectly in English, but Marcus could sense the harmonic undertones that had become part of how he processed language. He was changing, becoming something new, still human, but enhanced by his connection with Zefka. And, judging by his roommate's increasing emotional responses, the transformation was mutual. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The collective would be watching more closely, expecting more impossible achievements. His professors would assign more difficult problems, and his friends would continue to rely on his help with subjects that had once baffled him. But Marcus was no longer intimidated by the prospect of exceeding expectations. After all, exceeding expectations was apparently what humans did best. Stood before the Galactic Collective Council, about to do something that no human in history had ever done, argue for his species' recognition as a Class A sentient civilization. The journey to this moment had been anything but straightforward. It started 3 weeks earlier when Zefka received an emergency transmission that caused its entire crystalline structure to pulse with colors Marcus had never seen before. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, looking up from his advanced quantum mechanics homework, a subject that still boggled his mind, despite months of inadvertent tutoring from his alien roommate. "The Collective Council has made a decision regarding humanity," Zefka said, its voice carrying harmonics of distress. "They are voting to classify your species as Class C, limited cognitive development." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means they believe humans show promise but require extensive galactic guidance to reach full potential. Your planet would be placed under collective oversight, with mandatory educational and cultural interventions." "You mean they want to take over Earth because they think we're too stupid to govern ourselves?" "In essence, yes." Marcus stared at his roommate, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. "But you've been sending them reports about human capabilities for months. About our problem-solving abilities, our creativity, our resilience." "I have. But the Council believes my findings are the result of observational bias caused by our neural synchronization. They think my judgment has been compromised by prolonged exposure to human thought patterns." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. The very connection that had allowed Zefka to truly understand human intelligence was now being used to discredit that understanding. "There is, however, one possibility," Zefka continued hesitantly. "Collective law allows for direct testimony in cases where a species classification is disputed. A human representative could appear before the council to demonstrate your species' cognitive capabilities." "And you think I should do it?" "You are the only human who has successfully communicated with collective representatives. You are also the first to solve a harmony equation using intuitive analysis. If any human could convince the council, it would be you." Marcus laughed bitterly. "No pressure, right? Just the future of human civilization resting on whether I can impress a bunch of crystal aliens. Marcus, Zefka said softly, its form dimming to a gentle glow. What do humans do when faced with impossible situations? Despite his anxiety, Marcus found himself smiling. We figure out a way to make them possible. Precisely. The preparation for Marcus's appearance before the collective council was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Zefka had to teach him the basics of galactic etiquette, which involved complex harmonic communication protocols and energy resonance sensitivity. Remember, Zefka explained as they practiced, the council members represent 12 different species. They communicate through overlapping harmonic frequencies, visual light patterns, and electromagnetic field fluctuations simultaneously. Marcus tried to follow the demonstration, watching Zefka's crystalline form shift through a complex sequence of colors and tones. How am I supposed to keep track of all that? You are not expected to fully comprehend their communication methods. You need only respond honestly and demonstrate human cognitive processes in action. What if I mess up? What if I prove their point about humans being cognitively limited? Zefka's form brightened with what Marcus had learned to recognize as confidence. Impossible. Simply being yourself will demonstrate capabilities they do not expect. The day of the hearing, Marcus found himself aboard a collective transport ship that existed in what Zefka described as folded spacetime. The journey to the council chambers took 3 hours and 17 dimensions, which Marcus tried very hard not to think about too deeply. The council chamber was overwhelming, a vast crystalline amphitheater floating in the void between stars. 12 distinct beings representing the major galactic civilizations occupied seats arranged in a complex geometric pattern that hurt Marcus's brain to look at directly. Human Representative Marcus Chen announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, "You have requested the right to challenge your species' cognitive classification. State your argument." Marcus stood at the center of the chamber, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. But, then, he remembered something Zefka had told him: humans didn't become extraordinary by avoiding impossible situations, they became extraordinary by facing them anyway. Honored Council, Marcus began, I'm told you believe humans require galactic oversight because our cognitive abilities are too limited for self-governance. I'd like to respectfully disagree. A ripple of harmonic communication passed between the council members, surprise, perhaps, that a human would challenge their assessments so directly. You will demonstrate this disagreement how? Asked a being that looked like a mobile constellation of stars. By showing you how humans actually solve problems, Marcus said. Not the way your tests measure intelligence, but the way we naturally think. Marcus had prepared for this moment by working with Zefka to identify a problem that would showcase uniquely human cognitive approaches. They'd settled on something that combined logic, creativity, and emotional intelligence, areas where humans consistently performed beyond galactic expectations. I'd like to present a scenario, Marcus continued. A colony ship with multiple species is facing a critical systems failure. The ship's AI has calculated that there are insufficient resources to save everyone. Standard galactic protocol would be to preserve the most valuable individuals based on objective criteria, intelligence levels, genetic health, social utility. Marcus paused, letting the scenario settle. How would each of your species handle this situation? The council members conferred in their complex harmonic language. Finally, the stellar being spoke. Logical triage protocols would be implemented. Those with greatest utility to species survival would be preserved. Mathematically optimal, agreed another council member, whose form resembled a geometric pattern that constantly shifted through impossible angles. Emotional considerations would be irrelevant. That's exactly what I thought you'd say, Marcus replied. And that's why you don't understand humans. He activated the holographic display Zefka had helped him prepare, showing the colony ship scenario in 3 dimensions. When humans face this situation, we don't start with mathematical optimization. We start with a question: how do we save everyone? Impossible, stated the geometric being. Insufficient resources make universal preservation mathematically unviable. Watch, Marcus said, manipulating the hologram. Humans would first challenge the assumption that the resource calculation is absolute. Maybe the ship's AI is operating on outdated efficiency models. Maybe there are unconventional energy sources available. Maybe we can reduce consumption in ways the AI didn't consider. As Marcus worked through the scenario, he demonstrated a dozen different approaches that human crews might take, from repurposing non-essential systems to implementing short-term life support alternatives that would buy time for more creative solutions. But, most importantly, Marcus continued, humans would involve everyone in solving the problem. We'd ask the children for ideas that adults might miss. We'd consult with people from different backgrounds who might see solutions we've overlooked. We'd even ask for input from the people who might be considered least valuable by your mathematical standards. This is inefficient, observed a council member who resembled a sentient crystal formation. Including inferior cognitive resources would delay optimal solution implementation. Would it? Marcus asked. In 2009, a human aircraft lost both engines shortly after takeoff over New York City. Every mathematical model said the plane would crash with no survivors. The pilot had about 3 minutes to solve an impossible problem. Marcus created a new hologram showing the famous Hudson River landing. Captain Sullenberger didn't just rely on his training or run calculations. He considered factors that weren't in any manual: wind patterns, water temperature, rescue response times, passenger distribution. He made a decision that every flight simulator said was impossible, and saved 155 lives. The chamber fell silent. 3 months later, Marcus continued, when other pilots tried to replicate his decision using simulators and advanced computers, they crashed 95% of the time. It turns out that Captain Sullenberger succeeded because he didn't just solve the mathematical problem, he solved the human problem. Marcus gestured to the holographic display. That's what humans do. We don't just optimize for mathematical efficiency. We optimize for outcomes that preserve what we value most. And what we value most is each other. This is emotionally based decision-making, the stellar being pointed out. Such approaches are inherently unreliable. Are they? Marcus asked. In the past century, humanity has survived 2 world wars, multiple pandemic diseases, economic collapses, natural disasters, and the threat of nuclear self-destruction. We've done this without galactic oversight or advanced technology. We've done it by consistently choosing to protect each other instead of just protecting the most valuable among us. Marcus took a deep breath, preparing for his final argument. You think humans need supervision because we make decisions based on emotion and intuition instead of pure logic. But emotion and intuition aren't weaknesses, they're additional processing systems that let us consider factors your algorithms miss. He turned to face each council member in turn. When my roommate Zefka was first assigned to study humans, you expected it to maintain scientific objectivity. Instead, our neural patterns synchronized, and Zefka began experiencing human emotions. You called this contamination. It was contamination, the geometric being insisted. Emotional attachment compromises analytical objectivity. Does it? Marcus asked. Because after Zefka started caring about me as a friend instead of just studying me as a subject, its understanding of human capabilities increased exponentially. Emotional connection didn't cloud Zefka's judgment, it gave Zefka access to information that pure observation never could. Marcus felt the neural synchronization with Zefka humming in the back of his mind, lending him confidence. That's the key to understanding humans. We don't just think with our brains, we think with our relationships. Our connections to each other make us smarter, not dumber. Fascinating, admitted the crystal being. But, ultimately irrelevant. Emotional decision-making remains inherently unstable. Then, let me ask you this, Marcus said. If human emotional decision-making is so unreliable, why are we here? Clarification required, several council members said simultaneously. Think about it logically, Marcus explained. I'm a college student from California. 6 months ago, my biggest problem was passing organic chemistry. I had no knowledge of galactic civilization, no training in interspecies communication, no preparation for any of this. Marcus gestured around the impossible chamber floating in space. Yet here I am, successfully communicating with 12 advanced species simultaneously, defending my entire planet's right to self-governance. How is this possible, if humans are cognitively limited? the chamber was completely silent. "I'm possible," Marcus continued, "because humans have an unlimited capacity for growth when we're challenged. You can't measure our intelligence accurately because it's not fixed, it expands to meet whatever situation we face." Marcus thought about his journey from stressed college student to galactic representative. 6 months ago, I couldn't solve a harmony equation. Today, I'm using harmonic resonance to communicate with beings whose existence I couldn't even have imagined. That's not because I became a different person, it's because humans can become more than they were when circumstances demand it. This growth capacity you describe, the stellar being said slowly, it is demonstrated consistently across your species? Every day, Marcus replied. Every human who's ever learned a new language, mastered a difficult skill, recovered from trauma, or adapted to unexpected circumstances is demonstrating the same principle. We don't just survive change, we use it to become more capable. Marcus felt a surge of confidence as he realized the truth of what he was saying. You want to govern humanity because you think we need guidance to reach our potential. But, you're measuring us wrong. Human potential isn't a destination we reach, it's a process we live. The council members conferred in their harmonic language for what felt like hours. Finally, the stellar being spoke. Human Representative Marcus Chen, this council finds your arguments compelling. However, such a radical reclassification requires unprecedented evidence. What kind of evidence? Marcus asked. You will be given a series of challenges designed to test the cognitive claims you have made. Not mathematical problems or logical puzzles, but scenarios requiring the adaptive intelligence you describe. You will have 1 hour to demonstrate that human cognitive flexibility can exceed galactic standard expectations. Marcus felt his heart racing. And, if I fail? Then, humanity will be classified as requiring galactic oversight, and your planet will be governed by collective administrators. And, if I succeed? Then, humanity will be granted Class A status as a fully autonomous sentient civilization, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Marcus looked out at the impossible vista of stars and void surrounding the chamber. Somewhere out there was Earth, where 7 billion humans were living their lives completely unaware that their future hung on what happened in the next hour. I accept, Marcus said. The first challenge materialized as a holographic scenario. A massive space station with multiple species aboard was experiencing cascading system failures. Traditional protocols called for evacuating the most essential personnel first, but the evacuation systems could only handle a fraction of the station's population. Marcus studied the scenario for barely 30 seconds before he started talking. First, I need to know who's actually on this station. Not just their technical qualifications, but their relationships, their backgrounds, their personal motivations. Such information is irrelevant to evacuation efficiency, the geometric being protested. Is it? Marcus manipulated the hologram, highlighting different sections of the station. Look, there's a group of engineers trapped in Section C. Standard protocol says they're non-essential because they're not senior staff. But they know the station's systems better than anyone. If we can get them to the control center instead of evacuating them, they might be able to stop the cascade failure entirely. Marcus worked through the scenario rapidly, identifying unconventional resources and unexpected solutions. A maintenance crew that could repurpose emergency systems. A group of children whose smaller size would let them access damaged areas. Even a poet whose understanding of rhythm might help calibrate the station's harmonic stabilizers. Instead of evacuating people, Marcus concluded, we organize them. Everyone becomes part of the solution based on their unique capabilities, not just their official qualifications. The second challenge involved a first contact scenario where mathematical communication had failed. Marcus approached it by analyzing the emotional and cultural contexts that might be affecting the alien visitors' responses. Within minutes, he'd identified that the aliens' apparent hostility was actually a ritualistic display of respect that humans had been misinterpreting. The third challenge was the most complex, a galactic trade dispute threatening to escalate into warfare. Traditional diplomatic solutions had failed because each species was focused on maximizing their own advantage. Marcus spent 10 minutes just studying the various species' cultural backgrounds and historical relationships. Then, he proposed something unprecedented, a solution where each species would temporarily sacrifice their optimal outcome to create a new framework that benefited everyone over time. This is not economically optimal for any participant, the crystal being observed. Short term, no, Marcus agreed. But, long term, it creates stronger relationships between species, which leads to better trade opportunities, technological sharing, and mutual protection agreements. The mathematical value compounds over time. When the challenges were complete, Marcus stood in the center of the chamber feeling mentally exhausted but strangely exhilarated. He'd spent the last hour thinking harder and more creatively than he ever had in his life. The council deliberated for nearly an hour, their harmonic communications creating complex musical patterns that were almost hypnotically beautiful. Finally, the stellar being spoke. Human representative Marcus Chen, this council has reached a decision. Your demonstrated cognitive approaches are indeed unlike any we have previously encountered. You consistently identify solutions that our analysis protocols overlook, and you do so by incorporating factors we consider irrelevant. Marcus held his breath. However, we have come to understand that these factors are not irrelevant, they are simply beyond our current analytical frameworks. Your species appears to possess a form of intelligence that operates on principles we do not yet comprehend. Does that mean? Marcus began. It means humanity will be classified as Class A autonomous sentience, with full rights of self-governance and galactic citizenship. Furthermore, the collective formally requests that Earth consider participating in our cultural exchange programs as an equal partner, not as a subject of study. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. We did it, he whispered, thinking of Zefka waiting anxiously back on Earth. You did it, the stellar being corrected. Through methods that continue to exceed our understanding. The journey back to Earth passed in a blur of folded spacetime and impossible mathematics. When Marcus finally walked back into his dorm room, he found Zefka in the exact same position where he'd left him, apparently paralyzed with anxiety. Well? Zefka asked, its voice barely a whisper. Pack your bags, Marcus said with a grin. We're going to be roommates for a lot longer than either of us expected. Explain. Marcus flopped onto his bed, finally, allowing himself to feel the full emotional impact of what had just happened. Humanity just became the youngest species ever granted full galactic citizenship. And I've been invited to serve as Earth's first interspecies cultural liaison. Zefka's entire crystalline structure blazed with light so bright it cast rainbow patterns on every surface in the room. You succeeded. We succeeded, Marcus corrected. None of this would have been possible without everything you taught me about thinking beyond human limitations. As the news of humanity's new galactic status began to spread across campus and, then, around the world, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been worried about passing organic chemistry. Now he was helping to navigate Earth's entrance into galactic civilization. But, more than that, he'd discovered something profound about human nature. They weren't just survivors, they were adapters. They didn't just solve problems, they transformed challenges into opportunities for growth. So what happens now? Marcus asked, watching news reports of humanity's first contact with the Galactic Collective. Now the real work begins, Zefka replied. Integrating Earth into galactic society will require unprecedented cooperation between species. There will be cultural misunderstandings, technological gaps to bridge, and philosophical differences to navigate. Marcus grinned. Good thing humans specialize in impossible problems. Indeed, Zefka agreed, its form settling into its familiar meditative posture. Though I suspect that after today, the collective may need to reconsider what constitutes impossible. As Marcus lay in bed that night, listening to the gentle harmonic resonance that had become the soundtrack of his new life, he marveled at the journey that had brought him here. Living with an alien roommate had indeed been difficult, but it had also been the most important thing he'd ever done. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Earth would need representatives trained in galactic diplomacy. Humans would need to learn technologies that operated on principles they barely understood. The entire species would need to adapt to being part of a community they'd never imagined existed. But Marcus was no longer intimidated by the prospect of humanity exceeding expectations. After all, exceeding expectations wasn't just what humans did occasionally, it was what they did every single day, in small ways and, large, whenever life demanded more of them than they thought they could give. And, judging by his alien roommate's contented glow, the rest of the galaxy was finally beginning to understand that about humanity too.